Settle down, brother. This is the Quarter Report powered by ENCA.com. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. There's an incredibly famous line in one of the most iconic animated films of all time, Madagascar. This line perfectly encapsulates the way that South Africans like to smile at people who are angry with us and wait for consequences to reach them. It's from the Penguins, and they say, "Smile and wave, boys. Just smile and wave." And what South Africa has done to the most powerful country on earth around the G20 in the last week is literally that. President Ramaphosa, smile and wave at Trump. Ronald Lamola, smile and wave at the American administration. And just wait for America to realize that they radically miscalculated their own power over the G20 summit, which starts in earnest this weekend. All the leaders are arriving as we speak. We have leaders of the EU and major European powers and Asian powers and people from all around the world coming. And America tried their level best to stop them from coming. And ultimately, they all rejected America to come and be in Johannesburg, South Africa this weekend. So on today's show, we're going to talk about the G20. Some people still don't even really know what it's for, and I empathize with you. But the G20 is a really important moment where some of the world's most powerful, industrialized, and large economic superpowers get together. And so it's an opportunity to push real agendas in front of the watching world and come up with real resolutions. I'm going to tell you how America flaked and backtracked and tried to play this kind of like Russian roulette, who blinks first, with South Africa, and fundamentally lost. And we're also going to talk about why James and I are wearing black today, because today Women for Change, amongst other civil society organizations, are leading an enormous protest across the country to draw attention to the fact that South Africa is one of the worst places in the world outside of active war zones to be a woman or a child, and make it. And the point of the protest today is to make a statement to force the South African government to take the fight against gender-based violence more seriously. And incredibly, last night, this mass action plan for today got its first win before they even did it today. We're going to talk about what all of that means. There's a lot to cover today, but it's a really important day as the whole world looks to not just South Africa, but Johannesburg specifically this weekend. The only place to watch the full show is on ENCA.com. The link is in the description. If you're on YouTube, also give us a like and a subscribe. You can go and buy merchandise that people continue to buy. Join us on our WhatsApp line, 0607 613 436. Follow our WhatsApp channel. And if you can't find it, there's links literally everywhere, or WhatsApp us. So let's start quickly with Ramaphosa's announcement last night that he acknowledges that the gender-based violence crisis in South Africa is a national crisis. The reason why we're wearing black and a lot of people are lying down and taking 15 minutes of silence in the middle of the day today is to show in front of the world the awful situation facing women and children every single day in this country. And last night, in response to this, the president himself said it's a national crisis. Now, we need to have some T's and C's apply here. Firstly, he said that it was a national crisis like 7 years ago, 2018, 2019, and he and his administration committed to a fund and committees and projects and reforms to try and help women, and most of those have gone pretty much nowhere, going nowhere slowly. You remember? Going nowhere slowly, it's all right, that show on SABC something back in the day. That is a good... If we're doing movie and film TV references today, that's another one. And remember, Women for Change has been calling explicitly, and they had a big protest earlier this year. They handed over a petition. They wanted to be classified a national state of disaster, which is not a national crisis. A national state of disaster is a legal classification that immediately frees up emergency funding to deal with that national state of disaster, to be poured into relief efforts, projects, and interventions to help the people who are affected. National states of disaster can happen or be declared, say, for example, when there is riots and mass looting and vandalism in places like KwaZulu-Natal a few years ago. When there are massive natural disasters, like once again in KZN, all of the flooding around Durban. Your KZN went through a rough few years. It's a massive leap forward, even though he said it 6-7 years ago, because he's saying it's a national crisis, and he said it in the context of the G20 summit, which means that there's international attention and awareness, which means that there can be international accountability mechanisms reputationally if they don't do anything about this now. And from what I understand, the South African government is saying they're now going to do more meetings with activist organizations, try to create more kind of interventions to turn things around. So that all is good. And people still protested today, and that is also a really good, important message. But it shows, once again, mass mobilization, mass action, grassroots organizing in a democracy can cause these flashpoint moments where you can really get stuff done because the politicians have to do the right thing because of the way that you've set them up to be forced to do the right thing.
Women for Change seems incredibly stoked about this, which for me is a good sign that this could actually result in something, and it would be different to the national crisis efforts that were made in 2018 and 2019. I still feel very apprehensive because remember at SONA, Ramaphosa said, all the police stations are safe for for women and children facing GBVF. Mr. President, I was at a police station recently. I won't say which one, but it was in like a nice neighborhood, and it was a seemingly pretty well put together police station. And I was there with my girlfriend, and we left afterwards, and she said, did you see the GBV desk? And I said, no, I didn't see it. It was one of those square wooden desks with the metal thing, and it literally said GBV desk on a printed out piece of paper that had been...
Or like Times New Roman 12.
Yeah, no, literally the smallest amount of effort you could put, and then pressed it on the desk, and no one was there.
Yeah.
And I was dealing with something that was not like it was bad, like a crime was done against me, but it wasn't personal.
Of course.
And I felt like the police officers that were servicing me were a bit lackadaisical.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you've gone through one of the worst experiences that anyone can go through?
Correct.
And then you have to deal with a printed out piece of paper on a wooden desk, like in the corner of a police station.
It sounds like it's technically a desk, but it actually makes it worse because it's so not a desk. Like rather just be like, come to the real counter in the police station.
It felt like malicious compliance, to be honest.
Okay.
For anyone who's gone through that experience, if you go to a rape crisis center, they will escort you to a police station and help you through that process.
Cool.
And that is the way that people should do it because the police are not going to treat you well.
We're done recording the show. News has just been announced by the South African government that they've moved or are moving to formally declare gender-based violence a national state of disaster, which is incredible. It's exactly what Women for Change and other organizations have been advocating and calling for such a long time. And it's immediately going to free up funds and create serious focus to create dramatic interventions to fight back against gender-based violence in South Africa. What is crucial now is to hold government accountable to make sure that they actually do what they promise to do. Because it's all well and good and cute to make all big promises and say you're going to do stuff in a moment of hyper attention, like in 2018 and 19 when there were the big protests and they said they'd do something, or at the G20 when the whole world is watching. But what about Tuesday when the whole world is left? So our new job is to be hyper attentive to what the government actually does. So you would have heard it on yesterday's show and the earlier shows in this week. America's been doing their level best to make nobody go to the G20. Trump's been back on his bullshit, saying that there's a white genocide in South Africa and they're exterminating their people and bad things are happening in South Africa. And what they were really hoping to do was have this kind of like mass boycott, this mass exodus to humiliate us as a country by having no major world leaders attend. And over this week, as it's become clearer and clearer and clearer that all of the major economic nation-state superpowers in the world are here, either with their actual heads of state or their second in command of state. And the EU as a bloc is here. And a number of other key states that represent economic zones are here. They've all come through. America has become more and more panicked and more desperate, to the point where earlier this week, Trump's administration said that South Africa mustn't hand over a declaration at the end of the G20 because the G20 can't meaningfully be called the G20 if America's not involved. To which our head of DIRCO, Ronald Lamola, said, well, if you don't come, you're not part of it. So I don't know what you want me to say. You can come, you don't have to come. We have a seat for you. It's up to you. If you don't feel like rocking up, then whatever. And then America wilted last night. America decided suddenly that they did want to participate. They were going to send one of their junior diplomats to South Africa to receive the declaration. And that's very funny because America was like, this country is so terrible. None of us is coming. How dare you? Nobody go. Even though just 2 weeks ago, before Trump changed his mind, their Deputy President, J.D. Vance, was booked and busy with a delegation coming to the G20, which shows you how ridiculous this is. But America just panicked and realized that everybody had ignored them. They'd rejected America in favor of the reality and the truth and going to South Africa for the G20. And if there's one thing that Trump in particular hates, it's being left out of a party and being made to feel small, silly, and irrelevant and ignored. And so Ramaphosa, our president, very reasonably then responded to America saying, okay, we're not going to participate, but we're going to send a junior diplomat to receive the declaration as, no, we're not going to do that. We're not accepting a junior diplomat official to come through and accept our declaration. Either you be serious or you're not going to be there. Or you can be there, but we're not going to give you the declaration. That's absurd and disrespectful. These are the world's most elite leaders all coming together to try and do something serious for the world, and we're not going to be treated in this way. And I think he was clever because he framed it as it's not just an insult to South Africa to do that. It's an insult to all of the G20 member states and their leaders who are here doing something serious and important to then have this flippant kind of receiving of the declaration. The only reason why we would give America the declaration is that the declaration of the G20 is always handed over to the next host. So Brazil handed it to us last year, and we would, if America was being serious, hand it over to them because they're hosting the G20 in Miami, or Durban, the Durban of the United States, according to James, in Miami, Florida, or just in Florida next year. I want to give enormous credit to our president, Ramaphosa, again. Remember, Madagascar? Smile and wave, boys. Just smile and wave. One of the most threatening things to a would-be fascist, would-be dictator, authoritarian leader is to be laughed at, because you are trying to exude and project the image of ultimate power and therefore danger. Everyone is scared of you. They won't dare cross you. And the best way to strip down and humiliate an emperor has no clothes, those kinds of people, is to laugh at them, because then they seem silly and ridiculous and weak and not strong. And so when Ramaphosa addressed this mess, and we're also going to play this clip now, listen to the beginning.
We have received notice from the United States, a notice which we are still in discussions with them over, about a change of mind about participating in one shape, form, or other.
A little quiet laugh and a sigh, and everyone in the room, the tension is broken and everyone is laughing with him, which again is the most humiliating outcome for the American administration. Everyone else in the room who they wanted to scare off from coming to the G20 is with our president laughing at the absurdity of the American response and behavior of their administration. And then he just very quietly, diplomatically said, this is what we're going to do. South Africa's open to everybody. We work with everybody. They can come or they can't come. But that's what we're going to do. And it was so masterfully well handled. And again, I'm not a simp for our president. I have so many criticisms of him and his administration. I think he's failed in so many ways. But as we've spoken about before, he is a master political operator. He's a master diplomat. And the way that he's been able to just handle Trump, the Dorito dictator, the demented Nazi, and just hold him at a distance until they have fallen over themselves. Chef's kiss. Then something extraordinary happened. The press secretary for the Trump administration, a really dim person called Caroline or Catherine Leavitt or something, which she really should have done. She should have taken the advice of her own surname for this situation. She came out and she was quite extraordinary.
The United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa. I saw the South African president running his mouth a little bit against the United States and the president of the United States earlier today, and that language is not appreciated by the president or his team.
Running his mouth a little bit of the democratically elected leader of a nation state country, that is so offensive, so insane. If a colleague of mine at work who is not higher ranking than me said that I was running my mouth, James, I would be offended. That's so disrespectful. That's so undermining. That is like jaw-dropping level of insolence to me, especially from Caroline Leavitt, whose job full-time is to protect the president. This is the grab him by the pussy president, running his mouth a little bit. That language is not appreciated. Just a week ago, Trump got in an enormous amount of trouble because he called a woman journalist who was asking a very reasonable question. He said to her, "Quiet piggy." You know what Caroline Leavitt's defense for that was? It was just an honest, candid moment and kind of like she was behaving inappropriately, so kind of wink nudge, victim blaming, she deserved it. And now you, the person defending quiet piggy and grab him by the pussy, is saying that language is not appreciated and our president is running his mouth a little bit. let's talk about the G20, what they're trying to achieve this weekend. So, if you don't know, and I actually want to thank a first-time WhatsApper on the WhatsApp line, Sandile. Evening to you, team TBN. It's their first time recording. I'm a fan of your work and I watch your videos religiously on YouTube, some very informative stuff. I have a burning question. What is the G20 really about? Why are world powers bidding to buy our country in pieces? What in the Berlin conference is going on? The arrogance on their part to even do it in our own country, and the cowardice on the part of our leaders in letting it happen right under their noses and not saying an effing word. I don't mean to dictate the topics of your work, but I do believe in exploring all the big matters in the country if we're being impartial in the work we do, meant in good spirits. Sandile. Thank you, Sandile. We were going to talk about this anyway, but that perfectly lines up. So, Sandile, the G20 is not a Berlin conference. It's not a mad rush to try and steal all kinds of resources. The G20 rotates its host nation. It was in Brazil last year. It'll be in America next year. It's in South Africa this year. And what the G20 fundamentally is the largest economic superpowers in the world, whether it be regions or individual countries, coming together to try and work on economic stability. We did this show 2 weeks ago after the Asian financial crisis of 97, 98. There was this recognition that for an economically stable world, which is better for everybody involved because then economic development can happen and more people can make more money and make more business and make more products, and you know the thing, then an economically stable world means more prosperity and safety for everybody all around the world. But there was an acknowledgement also that bad economic instability in one place affects other places. See the financial crisis of 2008 with the American housing market bubble. And so there was this belief, and it wasn't G20 at the beginning, it was a smaller group, but they've expanded it over the last few decades, that you need the world's economic superpowers to be coming together and forming agreements, declarations, working on goals and common values to share to try and look after the world economic order as best as possible. Now, a lot of T's and C's need to apply here. As much as the G20 exists, we still live in a world where many people conceive of, economic development as competition between governments and between countries. And they perceive the G20 as being cute, but ultimately each country will do what is best for them, and the big dogs will fight to try and eat the lunch of everybody else, particularly the smaller dogs. And so we need to remember that and not think of the G20 as some kind of miracle cure, proof that like we are led by good state actors and good, countries with good interests. But the G20 has been a place where common values and goals have developed over the last 20 years. So for example, what used to be the idea of economic stability has now developed into an understanding that for economic stability, you need peace. So the G20 thinks about and wrestles with trying to avoid armed conflict. There's an acknowledgement that gender justice and gender parity needs to happen. Going back to the Women for Change protest movement march today and a demonstration, there's an understanding that sexism and misogyny and patriarchy undermines economic stability and limits economic progress and development. So gender is spoken about at the G20 by these world leaders. Also climate change, because more and more world leaders now acknowledge that rapid climate change is a massive threat to quality of life and economic stability and progress and prosperity. And so under the broad kind of catch-all of economic stability, the G20 has become a place where world leaders can get together and say, this is how we feel about this, what we want to do about climate change. This is how we feel about this, what we want to do about this. So as much as they're all deeply self-interested, capitalist hegemons fighting for themselves, at core, because of what they are trying to pretend to be, what they're kind of cosplaying and performing to be as good people, good leaders at the G20, sometimes good things happen at the G20. From what I've heard, the key contestations going into the potential G20 declaration are taxing multinationals, what to do about climate change, and what to do about gender. And there might be other ones that unfold over the coming 2 days before Sunday.